It's the Lean Into Artcast, the show where a couple of visual storytellers get together and take on various visual storytelling topics, making things, designing things, writing things, drawing things, communicating visually, and all of the lifestyle stuff that goes into that, like organizing one's business, one's job, gigs, and reflecting on all that stuff that goes into that. And we drill down and think really hard about this stuff, so you will too. My name is Jerzy Drozd. I'm a cartoonist and teaching artist. The other host is...
Hey, I'm Rob Stenzinger, a coder and designer of the UX and game type.
Good to see you, Rob.
Yeah, good to see you.
If anybody missed last week's episode, we were in the same studio, and that was a lot of shenanigans and fun.
It was. Yeah, it's both shenanigans and fun. It's a different feel when you're in the same place. There's some of the something about like nonverbal communication, even though, I mean, we can see each other on the Hangouts, right? But that's our normal thing. Over the years, we've tried a variety of ways of recording, but typically have always had some kind of video stream. And, but those episodes when we're sitting side by side that happen once in a while, it's neat. It's a special thing.
Yeah, it does make a big difference being in the same room. And I mean, when we do the show, I don't think anybody can see this while we're broadcasting, but like we can actually see preview windows of one another while we're talking to each other. That doesn't actually get mixed into the final YouTube video. So we can sort of feed off of each other, but really, like on my screen, Rob's picture is a postage stamp. So I can, like, unless he gestures wildly, I'm not going to get a full sense of, right, like what he's about. Like if he's doing the thing, that kind of face. It has to be like very extreme for me to pick up on it. Whereas like you can pick up on those micro expressions and everything once you're
just like leaning in or sitting back, going like, please, this is like, keep it coming. I'm chilling.
Yeah, leaning on the side like this, like, yeah, you got this, go for it. But that was fun. It was fun. We got to hang out in your hometown for a few days in the dead of winter. I got to see Minnesota at its worst, but it was a blast.
Well, I mean, it's basically, Minnesota climate keeps up with Michigan climate when it comes to the cold. So, but it was a lot of fun. Glad you could make it out, and that we had a chance to do a recording. So, but here we are this week, back at it. What's going on?
It never stops. So Rob, you may know that we have a contact page at leanintoart.com/contact with which people can interact with us in the form of sending us messages, sending us like thoughts, wonderings, questions, different kinds of topic ideas to chew upon. And we love it when you guys do that because that helps. It gives us a sense of what you guys are interested in hearing us talk about. And obviously we can sift through what we get and say, well, that looks like one that we could respond to very well. Or this is one that seems like it's an interesting idea to like just chew on for an hour or so. And we got an interesting one on mini comics. Now, before anybody says it, yes, episode 215, we did do a wonderful celebration of mini comics about how, there's these little short manageable projects that you can usually do in an afternoon or maybe a week, depending on how much time you have, and then you can do like all sorts of cool artifacts. This is actually a Pranas Najikaitis comic that I got at CXC last year, and we talked about him during that episode. And this is a comic he did with glow-in-the-dark ink on the cover, right? He silk screened, and he worked it into the story. It's actually about childhood in the dark. But they can come in all sorts of sizes, and you could do all sorts of printing technologies, whether it's like using not offset, what am I trying to say? Laser printer, photocopiers, risographs, right? And they can come in all sorts of different formats, right? So like here's one I got from Chris Duffy. It's this fun little narrow comic,
cool.
Or even tinier yet, right? Like this is like I almost feel like it's the platonic ideal of mini comics, where it's this little tiny book, right? And it opens up one sheet of paper with all the art on one side.
Yeah, that is a very slick format.
It really is.
Where you kind of you slice a little mouth in the middle of the page and it folds up. That's a great way to paginate, and like you only have to work on one side, right? One side of the paper. You do all your art there. That is
all your art on
slick.
one side.
Yep.
And so it becomes like a very inexpensive and accessible way to get into making comics. I do one of these with my students every time I run a comics class. But then there's other things we talked about in that episode. You can go back. We'll link to it in the show notes where you can check out the full discussion where we talked about like there's different die cutting you can do and different kinds of packaging. Like Pranis's excellent Laffy Meal comic where it was like a bagged, a Happy Meal bag from McDonald's, quote unquote. It wasn't really McDonald's. It was a Laffy Meal, not a Happy Meal. And there's all these little mini comics inside shaped like here's your burger, here's your fries, here's your ketchup packet, here's your snack. And each one of those opened up to become its own little mini comic. So there's like brilliant, fun things you can do with the presentation. That leads us to Joseph's email. Do you want to read it or you want me to?
I'm happy to read it. So again, this was via our contact form at leanintoart.com/contact. Joseph Coco says, I do the layouts for printing Becca Hilburn's mini comics because her InDesign skills are rusty. No worries. We all are learning stuff. Anyway, my commentary. I always instinctively create a web publishing version of the mini comic as well in case it's needed. We're huge mini comic collectors and have noticed everyone is drawn to the idea that mini comics are handmade ephemeral physical works that have their own character, almost bespoke. So it makes me wonder if the aspect of mini comics if that aspect of mini comics is reduced when a digital version is produced and distributed. I guess this would be the same as someone selling a painting and then making prints of it. Essentially what are our thoughts on this? And do you release your mini comics digitally to the general public, either for sale or free?
It's a good question. Yeah. I think that's worth. So like we talked in 215 about the special rarity and the hand touch of doing mini comics. Now let's talk about what happens when you turn them into digital items that can be distributed freely and with little cost and without the special affordances of that tactile physical thing. Brandon Dayton, who is quickly like climbing the ranks of the various Obi-Wan Kenobi ghosts that I invoke on the show, has a fabulous YouTube channel that everybody should go check out. He's been doing these terrific essays. He talked about like pricing art. And he talked about how like he was examining some of the problems that we face in a 21st century economy about like how we think about art and what it's worth. And he was placing some of the blame, a substantial amount of the blame, on the Industrial Revolution and said the moment you turn things into widgets, it confuses our notion of what value is, right? Because the moment we can have a lot of things for very cheap, well, it doesn't really have value then, does it? Or does it, right? And so like that's like the sort of the cognitive dissonance we have to push through when we think about this. Like this scarcity, small print run. I touched each and every one with my own hands when I silk screened these covers, right? Digital version, different beast. So moving from the physical, let's move to the digital. Are you ready for some bridge music, Rob?
I'm ready to go there.
All right. Then how about this? We don't get to watch. Oh, there he is. He's dancing. We watched Dragon Ball while we were hanging out in Minnesota too.
Yes.
All right. So yeah, getting the mini comic out there digitally. So I thought this would be more of like an on the ground kind of discussion of like, okay, what does that mean to get it out there digitally? Like what platforms, what formats, right?
Yeah. So I know that you've been putting out your comics digitally for quite some time. Like, I mean, you serialized via webcomic. And also, I mean, you really got into like these alternate formats too, things that I never really tried. Like, but I mean, I noticed from afar, and I thought I would need to get into it, but it never became urgent when I was working on Art Geek Zoo. Mm-hmm. But like things like reaching the PlayStation Portable, right? And
yeah. Is that even a thing anymore? Do people even consume like digital media on the PSP anymore? That's like 10 years ago.
I imagine some are in circulation. I mean, there was a few versions of the PSP, and I've actually owned none of them.
Really?
Which is funny because I like video games a lot and try to collect systems and stuff, but yeah, just haven't dove into that. Maybe now's a good time. But
yeah, actually, it's probably very affordable now. Although after the Nintendo Switch, I mean, I just don't know. Well, maybe that'll be something like lovely about like reminiscent about the experience of using an old platform like that. But
yeah, almost guarantee that there will be some standout title that's kind of locked in to that platform. maybe not, but pretty likely. Who knows? It'll be an interesting exercise. I'll have to go treasure hunt that.
But for those who have been like, like really mining comics history, in 2007, so this is a while ago now, we're talking about 11 years ago, when I was working on a project called Sugary Serials, Serials spelled Serials, like serialized fiction. It was this anthology that I was putting together in cooperation with Kablam, ka-blam.com. And one of the things that I felt was very important from the start, it was a hypothesis, and I didn't do a lot of effective testing. So I'm not clapping myself on the back. I'm just explaining what my mindset was. My thought was, I want this to be as easy for people to get as possible. So therefore, I'm going to make sure that this is in as many formats as possible. And there was like a downloads page on the Sugar Cereal site where you could purchase the print book, download a PDF, and I think there was a link to the serialized pages on the web page, and then there was what was called CBZ format, which was a serialized zip file that worked with the PSP. And I don't know why, but it seemed like everybody was talking about that in 2007. Like, got to get it on this platform.
And well, with the first iPad and whatnot too, certainly in that era, it was still being talked about because there were apps that, and there probably still are, in on your tablets, probably Android tablets as well, that support that format. But that's so I guess I was curious. It's interesting from a history perspective how different formats come and go. But then, like, what led you to think like you wanted to reach people with that format? Where I mean, in I don't know, is it analogous to someone deciding like, well, PDF would be a more common one today? Is it a similar thought process, or is it just literally the same thing as saying like, well, I'm going digital, so I pick whatever's out there?
Yeah, I remember at the time. Again, this is 2007, so I don't think the iPad was out yet. Is that right? It came out in late 2007?
Yeah, so was it 2008 or 9? Let's see, 2007 was the first iPhone. So the iPad, I think, was at least 2 years later.
Okay. Yeah, if I remember right, it didn't exist yet. And while we had iPhones out, I remember thinking like, PDFs, pinching and zooming on this little screen doesn't feel like an awesome reading experience, and I'm having a difficulty. It doesn't seem obvious to me that people are going to flock to this format. Like, I can read a PDF on my computer, I can flip back and forth using buttons, but like, it just doesn't feel awesome to me. The idea of scrolling through a CBZ on a small screen, that made sense to me. So I felt like that seemed more interesting and more likely to be a contender. But the moment iPads came out, I was like, yeah, PDF's great, right? You can read them very easily. You can flick through them really easily. So,
April 3rd, 2010, by the way.
Oh,
yeah. So
it was
almost 8 years ago.
But I haven't done a lot of investigation into this, but EPUB was another one that like I started doing investigation into, ran into a few hurdles, didn't have the bandwidth to really invest in it, and it was one of those things that kind of fell off my plate. But did you mess around with that at all with any of your books, Rob?
Oh yeah, books for sure. So let's see, at creativecodekit.com you can see the book I made called Game Construction Kit Underwater Tomato Ninja Edition. And that is a learning to make games by exploring different angles on changing a working game in a choose your own adventure way. And so to get that non-linear exploration and stuff in the book navigation, I decided to go with EPUB, which EPUB is basically a form of HTML. It's like not everything that HTML can do, but maybe that's changed since I released that book. That's been, what was it, 2014 when I got that out. And EPUB is an interesting, it's almost like just zipping up a website in a way. And then if you make a well formatted one, then you have these features like a book cover and a table of contents and stuff like that. And then of course you can even embed some audio, video, but the file size gets big. And it's totally usable for comics as well. But I've not actually done that.
Yeah, and I know that some software like Manga Studio or Clip Studio Paint EX, I think, has like an export to PDF or EPUB and PDF version or functionality built into the software. So I feel like the hurdles are
iPad
getting
version too
smaller. iPad version. Oh, the iPad
of yeah.
version has that?
Hmm.
Wow.
I gotta try that. That's yeah, interesting.
Capturing that. So yeah, okay. So and we'll get more into this, I think, in 10,000 feet up when like the decision making that one goes into when deciding different formats and how that changes our thinking. I just thought it would be worth going into what are some of the different formats out there, right?
Yeah, right on.
There's like zipped archives, collected PDFs, EPUB formats. I'm trying to think if there's anything else off the top of my head that I've explored in collecting my stuff. Um, Maybe it'll come to me as we talk about platforms.
Well, I mean, if you're going all the way up to having a lot more control over the experience and making it like sort of a interactive visual novel, then there are other ways to do that as well. And you essentially package it as a complete application.
Mm-hmm.
So it behaves less like a piece of media that you separately store in a library, and more like a game, which is kind of that way. It's just that now you're going more toward the application and game route versus piece of paginated book content.
Right. And I remember into 2011, this is back in the art and story days, that was like where I thought it was going to go. Like that's what all comics are going to be. And I think Double Feature was the website that explored the idea to the closest to what I figured where I thought it was going to go. I don't know if you remember that website, Rob. It was run by a couple of professional, like
We talked
traditionally
about it on
published.
the podcast some time ago. We talked about it on Lean Into Art as well. Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, it was like it was a typical web presentation of a comic, but like there was all this interactivity built into it where it's like, well, now you can look at the penciled version, you can look at the inked version, you can look at the sketch version. Here's annotations, here's like extra features and extra interactivity baked into that, which a lot different than this, right?
Oh yeah.
So I feel like that'll be in the second half of the show is us exploring like, okay, well, how if this is the print edition, the original incarnation, you're thinking about like putting it on the web. What's the spectrum between this and it becoming another thing entirely, right? Another animal, and how much do you want to invest in that direction, right?
Yeah, very interesting. And yeah, exploring those trade-offs. But quick note, in episode 93 of Lean Into Art, we actually talked about the process of making making an EPUB, where it was really just exploring some behind the scenes on making that book game construction kit. So
cool.
Yeah.
93, you say?
Yeah. Lean Into Art episode 93. Making ebooks.
Making ebooks. All right, capturing that for the show notes as well. We'll link to that along with episode 215. Platforms. So it's like, okay, where are you going to put these things, and what kind of? Are you going to give them away for free? Are you going to give them? Are you going to sell them? If you sell them, what for? Where are you going to sell them? When it comes to my self-published comics, they're all sold on indieplanet.com, and they have an automatic create a PDF to sell in their digital bookstore automatically. Like that's just like there's no special prep in that regard for me. It's like I upload the files, I get some printed books, and I get a automatic marketplace for the PDF edition. But when it comes to the mini comics, which is our focus for this one, where can we sell them? Amazon is a place where you can do that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you could become a seller. Yeah, that's not a process I've gone through setting up, but I have used things like Gumroad, where you can sell physical or digital products. And same thing with Etsy. Etsy allows you to sell digital products. I actually bought a template for a mask I wore for Halloween, and I'm trying to remember the vendor, and it was through Etsy, and it was a PDF. So yeah, digital download. That was a new thing to me. I did not realize they supported that.
I didn't realize Etsy did that too. Okay.
Yeah,
because I have an Etsy store as well for like my physical comics. It never occurred to me to put digital comics there. I'll have to look into that. Nice. We're getting a question in the chat. Victor is asking, how long is a mini comic? 20 pages or something like that? It can be. Tends to be between 8 and 16 typically. And the idea is that it's small in size as well as in length, and it's something that can be done fairly quickly and easily and informally. right? I think that's that. We talk about it a lot more in episode 215. Another marketplace that people can sell their stuff, their comics, and I've noticed that a lot of people are selling their comics on here. A lot of people I know is itch.io. You've got stuff on there, Rob.
Yeah, true. I have the video game, This Panda Needs You, both on which we'll mention later in the show.
Mm-hmm. We'll mention that later in the show, but yeah. So itch.io is another marketplace where you can just upload your files and put them up for whatever price that you think is fair, and let people purchase them and download them from there, right? Advantage to that, does itch. I can't remember because I bought This Panda Needs You. Does it have like a downloads archive where you can like re-download things from your account?
Yeah, oh yeah. So you could have it on your computer, delete it, and it's essentially it's a lot like an iTunes or Valve's Steam or Google Play. All those big app store presences. You've essentially have a license and this thing in the cloud, and if you get different devices, you can install it on more devices that are supported by that platform. Yeah, pretty flexible.
Oh, and that just, I mean, so this is another thing that maybe if we have time we could explore in the second half is like evaluating platforms based on what affordances does it offer the user, because there's a temptation to say like, well, put them on all the platforms. Well, that's a lot of management and bandwidth that I don't necessarily have, and I doubt every cartoonist or visual storyteller has that bandwidth as well.
And just to mention too, like I mentioned, I didn't put on Amazon. I have not put my comics on Amazon, but I have put the book, Game Construction Kit on. I put that on the Barnes and Noble Nook portal. Amazon. Their Kindle, in the Kindle store, and let's see, I went other places too. Gumroad. What was that other competitor to Gumroad that was like Fly? It's it's killing me. It's probably
he's gonna look it up in a minute.
Website anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned Gumroad. Let's talk about Gumroad for a second while you look up what the competitor is, right? So Gumroad is another one where, and I believe it's been a while since I've logged into my account, but it runs the same way. Where you put like digital downloads, and then if you log into your account, even after you've lost the digital download, you can always re-download it after purchasing it, right? And if actually, now that I think about it, some of the people I've bought stuff from, they'll like release update packs to things that I bought, like I've bought brush packs from certain artists, and they'll be like, oh, here's 5 new brushes that I just added to that pack. You get it here, download it, right?
It's called Selfie. Not fly, but it's sell, as in sell something for purchase, right? And then fy.com. There was a huge feature difference back, years ago. All these platforms change, right? So there was like a payment method difference between Gumroad and other places. So part as experiment to say, well, let's see what happens. Where does this sell better or not? And then I can, invest more in that particular tool. And then honestly, it sold a small, humble amount in all the places. So I didn't really learn much that way. I just created a lot of work for myself, going to all those different places, because there are subtle different requirements, because, maybe your cover size or your preview art or the text you use to describe all this stuff, that when like a user goes into this portal, wherever it is, they go to, barnesandnoble.com, they want to buy something for their Nook, and well, there's different requirements, there versus, versus Amazon versus, the iTunes bookstore versus, anyway. And those requirements could be both the content that you have to represent your product in the different stores, or it could be the file size. And you're like, oh, gee, my it's too big. I have to go crunch my images, or I have to, Anyway, there were small little tweaks I made for almost every place to sell, except for Gumroad and Selfie, because they're just those were very flexible, and I would imagine itch.io would be just as flexible.
So there's a variety of places to put this stuff. Also, like releasing it as a webcomic. You make the mini comic first, then you serialize it on your website later, that kind of idea. Which leads me to another question. For sale or for free?
Okay. So I assume that, I think a lot of us want to, for free. Gosh, this is it's an interesting but yet wide open question, because what's the reason you made this thing? And are you looking to engage in some kind of trade? There is more than one kind of trade, as you notice, because we all use different platforms that we're not paying for. And so where does the value come from? What are you actually trading when you're using any of these, Gumroad, to Twitter, to whatever, right? You're not paying for these different things, except for typically in a portal, you're getting a transaction fee, or it's a revenue share where there's just a standard percent, where the like iTunes has a pretty standard 30%. So does Google Play. And the value trade is pretty obvious there. But let's see. Are you doing this to drive awareness of something? Are you doing this to, and then how would you measure that? Are you doing this to test and improve to make this eventually not free? So maybe you have different versions of this and different covers over time, or there's like an event-based specific version, right? So I don't know, like maybe we even have to return to for sale or free in
second half.
Then the second half. But I will say for straight to you for sale for free, and then for me for sale for free, because that's something we've actually done versus going through the whole modeling.
Agreed. Okay, so how about we dog-ear that for follow-up after the break, and we'll talk about. We'll ask each other for sale for free, and also ask ourselves the question of how do we even think about what this thing, what form it's going to take, given what life cycle it's going to have with regard to that spectrum I talked about earlier. Like, if it's meant to be a mini comic, how does that affect what its life is as a digital object, or does its future as a digital object affect how it lands as a physical object, right? Sound fair?
Yeah, lots of good stuff to dig into.
Okay. All right, well, we'll do that in about 1 minute and 30 seconds. But first, we got to thank some people who make the show possible. Those people happen to be the folks who support us on Patreon. Patreon.com/leanintoart. What is it? It's a way for you to give us a monthly upvote, a way to say $1 a month, whatever you can afford, like a Kickstarter for ongoing projects. And the more people that do that, the more that Rob and I are compensated for our time, the more sustainable the show is. And we want to thank 5 people who have been doing just that. First up, Rachel Ross at NYC Terrace on Twitter. Thank you, Rachel, for believing in us and what we do. India is at Old Swifty on Twitter. And India worked on a comic recently that got nominated for an award in Ireland. So congratulations to India. Check out, again, Old Swifty on Twitter. Becky Hilburn at Natto Soup, who was mentioned at the top of the show when Joseph Coco was talking about doing the pagination for her comics. So she does comics too. Check them out at Natto Soup on Twitter. Catherine Sugru at KATSOOGROO. I always say just Cat Sugru when I should be spelling it out because it has a interesting spelling. So thank you, Catherine. And finally, Ashley Knapp, longtime friend of the show, at Control Alt Lee, has been on the show before. Thank you, Ashley, for believing in us and what we do. And if you want to join them, you can go to patreon.com/leanintoart, where you'll find all the shows that we produce, as well as the extra leans, the shows we record in between these episodes, where Rob and I just riff on a topic and usually land somewhere in topic land. As a matter of fact, the last one we did, Rob caught himself topicking. Patreon.com/leanintoart. Thanks to everybody who has been supporting us there. It means a lot to us.
It really does. Thank you. Thank you very much. What do you think? Do we have something to send us off into this new exploration? A bit of a stinger? Ooh.
Oh, there it is now. Getting intense because we're going to go 10,000 feet up and talk about some abstract stuff. Some of the whys, some of the reasons why we do this stuff. All right.
All right. So, for sale or for free, right? This is an interesting thing. I mean, you mentioned serializing as a webcomic. I mentioned webcomic as well, but then Um, so have you done mini comic serializing specifically, and then mini comic packaged for free? So like two different forms there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the last one I did was that, right? A Friendly Game was something that I serialized as a daily update on my Patreon, then serialized it as I think I did it daily, maybe I did it weekly on the Boulder and Fleet website. So it began first as something just for subscribers, then it became like something that was freely public on the web, and then after that, it got collected in print. And then I explored different printing technology, learning how to use the letterpress and everything to produce the cover to create the mini comic. Now, so that was kind of a combination of for sale and for free, right? And I have yet to package that up as a PDF that people can buy on my Gumroad and my Amazon page and so on. That's TBD, or not TBD, to do. It's on my to do list.
Would the that special cover technique be maybe something that you haven't figured out, how you're going to go back to electronic with this? You have this letterpress cover. What are you going to do?
So yeah, I anticipated that problem, and this may be something where it's just like the luck of having done, not luck, the advantage of having done a lot of mini comics in the past is that I knew. So when I was working on the comic, I went to my Patreon subscribers knowing that they're the people who like are really invested in what I'm doing, so I can, I know that they're going to have, as they say, skin in the game with regards to what this thing ultimately looks like. So I did my sketch pitches for them of the cover. Like, here's 5 or 6 different versions of the cover. Which ones are standing out to you guys? And people voted, and I was like, okay, well, this one seems to be the one that everybody likes a lot. I'm going to do 2 versions. I'm going to do the digital colored version, where I digitally paint it, which I released as a desktop image on the Bolton Fleet website and on the Patreon. That's going to be the cover to the digital edition. That same art got used for the letterpress edition. Changed, of course, because it's not painted anymore. It's just like 2 flat colors now. But I specifically explored a design and an illustration that could be mapped to both formats very effectively, right? It could have those 2 different.
Yeah, you've planned ahead, so it's totally not a mystery then. Very, very cool.
But I didn't have a clue what the cover was going to be when I was actually making the mini comic. When I was serializing it on Patreon, I didn't know what the cover was going to look like. As a matter of fact, the cover that I wanted to do was the one that nobody voted on. So I was like, well, that one's not getting a positive signal.
Isn't that funny? The old feedback loop process.
Yeah, and
how many versions? You said you had 5 or 6.
5 or 6, something like that. I'd have to go back and look, but
that's a lot of versions. Wow.
I liked all of them, but like there was one that was like, that's the one I think is really good. And I think maybe one person said like it was like their 3rd vote. It's like, that's number 3, and then nobody else responded to it at all. I'm like, well, I guess it's not that good, And I've run into this in the past with graphic novels where I've released it with one cover. It sits on my table. Nobody buys it at conventions. I change the cover to a different design that I originally thought was not as strong, but what am I? Who am I to know? Because like all of a sudden it starts moving off the table because people respond to the other design better. So I guess that's something we can talk about as like an advantage to the digital edition, is that you can do that kind of A/B testing a little bit more easily, right?
Oh yeah, that's a pretty huge advantage. Being able to do small modifications, special versions, a holiday edition, like something with a digital book. I mean, it's certainly work, right? There's effort. And especially if you're like, well, it's not just this special idea I want to test. Well, I may have multiple iterations and I want to find the most effective version. So it could be a fair amount of work, but yet, I don't know if you would say that it's probably less work than the physical version as far as doing that same process, right?
Undoubtedly. I mean, I think my ETP is handy. I could pull up. I actually was just reviewing my ETP recently. The Emergent Task Planner, this daily planner thing that David Say has at davidsay.com.
You don't say.
You don't. I do say. Oh, he just dropped a hint that he's releasing some new planner system on February 1st to go along with his Groundhog Day resolutions, and like the hair on my neck stood up a little bit.
Sure, the wizard's casting his spell. What's going to happen?
He is. He's That's totally awesome. Doing like he's winding up like this, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great. Anyway, I was just going back and reviewing some past weeks, and I dug back a little bit further, and I actually saw that there was like one Saturday where I like the whole day, it was like an 8 hour day was spent on printing, you know. So yes, designing and drawing other covers can take a lot less time than actually running a printing machine and cleaning ink and breaking out mineral spirits and, you know, other toxic chemicals. Um, but what about
Wow.
you? For sale or for free?
Oh, for sale for free. I think it's a little of both. Where a lot of my content right now is depending on the venue you go to, it is well, the games I make are for pay. I don't offer a game as a pay what you want, but like for my comics, I do, and also workshops as well. I mean, other kinds of content, and uh, that's an easy way to explore. I don't know. Do you have an audience that they want to opt in and support you? And it's a nice sort of ritual exchange, value for value, where I've got a thing out there, and then but at the same time, when you offer it for pay what you want, sometimes what you want is nothing, right? It's for zero.
Mm-hmm.
However, you and I are both in like a sort of a freemium thing, where when patrons sign up for us for our Patreon at leanintoart.com or patreon.com/leanintoart. Sorry about that. We should also put that redirect on leanintoart.com. Come to think of it, add that to our Trello. The let's see. It's let's see, Patreon. Where was I going with that? I just added a task and I started working on it in my head.
So we have the freemium model where if people sign up and
Freemium,
pledge at our Patreon,
yeah, they totally
get
get
something.
a free comic. Yeah, get a free comic from you, free comic from me. And that's not the only way I sell that comic. Do I also do that same comic as pay what you want? I have it available let's see. I should know this. It's just been a while since I've messed around with it. Gumroad.com/Rob Stenzinger. I will put that in there. So there's so I take a variety of approaches. I tend to try to not do things for free unless we have some kind of value exchange. No, okay. It's Art Geek Zoo Hidden Talent, the comic that isn't a mini comic, but it's an example of something that so you do get this for free if you sign up for our Patreon. But then it's $2 at Gumroad. So, and I don't have any of my mini comics for sale right now in digital format. Yet they are all PDFs, and I probably could do that and should do that pretty easily.
You know, another thing I've been thinking about is like I've got enough of these mini comics done now where I really should think about like putting together into like a group PDF, right? Like here's like one purchase, get them all in one volume kind of thing, like an anthology.
A bundle. What a great idea.
A bundle, yeah. Yeah, and is let's see, I'm reading some comments from the chat. Shadowing Tronics, Troy is in here and he says it may also depend on the individual comic, or you could offer a free preview but charge for the official or full version. Sure. Right? You could do or even like in the case of some of my mini comics, which I've gone back and colored, you can have like a black and white version that's like the free version, and the color version is like the premium version. Yes, freemium, premium. Also, from platform to platform, I've charged different things. So I think on Gumroad, a lot of my comics are pay what you want, but on Amazon, they're a flat $1.99. Different markets, different expectations, right? People are reading these things on Kindles. So, you know, it's like, well, you could get it from Gumroad, but I know it's going to be super easy to get it for your Kindle on the Amazon website. So, you know, there's less friction means that the price doesn't hurt as bad. At least that's my hypothesis. And I don't think Amazon lets you do free pay what you want, right?
No, I don't think so. And that's so some of that is a limitation by platform. Mm-hmm. So the train of thought that you're pointing out, where you can be, maybe it's happenstance, it's limited by platform, or it's part of your iterating on a comic, and then okay, let's say you do put these mini comics out in a bundle. Like I mean, to me, that sounds like a pay thing, but do you think that's not? And so what would be like the scenario that would say, this makes sense to be free? Would it, what, is there a value for value exchange for that?
So there is a sort of like a. Do you happen to remember in the 90s the term ashcan comic?
I do. Never liked that term.
No, I didn't either. But what it represented was, and like this, my first mini comics, the very, very first one I ever made said an ashcan on it.
Yeah.
And it was like the first 12 pages of the first book I self-published and distributed through distribution channels as a kid. But there was this expectation of like, this is a free thing to generate interest. This is a taste of what you're going to get. So I can see the first chapter of something, the first 15 pages of something, or in the case of the Boulder and Fleet mini comic, the first 8-page story I ever did about those characters. Like, yeah, that can be a pay what you want. You can have it even for free, because I just want you to like get to know the characters and fall in love with them, so that hopefully you'll come back to the website and invest more into them. So gateway material, sure, that makes a lot of sense. But I don't think I put up any large. So like I was going to mention later on my Patreon for Boulder and Fleet, upon sign up, you actually get access to a PDF of the 88-page Mining for Trouble story.
Oh yeah.
So that's
88 pages.
88 pages, and
Whoa.
it's full color. And yeah, it was a lot of work. So that, no way, I'm not giving that away for free, because that was a lot of work, and I want to monetize that because I think it has a lot of value. So yeah, little tiny things that are like, it's really hard for me to make a case for an 8-page black and white PDF mini comic to say like anything more than $1 for something like that. So, you know, pay what you want for that, even $0. And I'm happy for anybody who reads it, or I'm happy if anybody reads it, right? Is the way I should have said it. But anything more substantial than that, anything that like I spent more than a week on, you know, I'm going to try to find ways to monetize that and bundle, if not monetize it on its own, bundle it with other things to monetize it, right? So like,
well,
say,
I mean, the bundling creates a different context. So you are creating like a new value from this prior work. The sort of this sampler you mentioned, that could really serve as that's like a, maybe even like a quick portfolio sampler, something that you would send as an email attachment if you're having a conversation about the kinds of work you do or what have you. Maybe, I don't know, but then something that's actually the bundle. Like, what if that bundle had a extra layer of context or presentation or something that means like, hey, this is my life over 10 years. I grew and changed as an artist. I've got a note about it, and here's 10, whatever, 5 comics, whatever. And that's the special jersey pack.
Special jersey pack. Well, that leads me to like another thing.
$5.99, $9.99. I don't know.
Well, no, yeah, and actually there is a lot of my old stuff that I could dig into and repackage that way. There's some bandwidth issues with like scanning old art, but like I've got some stuff that's already been PDF'd that I could bundle up that way. What about adding extra? So like this goes back to Joseph's original question. Is like, okay, we lose a little something when we switch from physical to digital. We're losing that hand touch thing. Should we be thinking about, well, let's not use the word should. What is interesting to think about with regard to maybe finding ways that digital can add that hand touch to it? And so what I'm thinking about is like, is there ways to add extra functionality? Is there ways to add extra material? Like, I've long thought about doing like audio commentaries for my different books, and I did for one of my graphic novels years ago. This is well over 10 years ago I did it. And with A Friendly Game, the comic that I recently did, I did do like a microcast sort of audio commentary for the book. I mean, what's to think about there with regard to, again, that spectrum of like, now we're getting into like something that print can't do when we start thinking about extra functionality.
Well, I think extra, I guess it depends on how much extra. And then what are you're, in a way, you're starting to enter the territory of making a new product. And that's the kind of thing that we've chatted about a few different times here, where what kind of assumptions do you have about what it's going to take for you to make that thing. What is that thing? Who, and do you feel that it's important for your audience, right? So maybe you can do like a pre-sale exploration. You could do an email sign up thing, and find some way to gauge interest before maybe doing a big investment, right? But a small investment sounds like a small product experiment. And so I guess it really depends. With a mini comic doing commentary, even for a few mini comics in a bundle, doing commentary might not be that expensive. But doing a performance of all the lines, that takes a little more work. I did that. I did an experiment with that a few years back. One of the early Polytechnicasts is me actually doing a reading of the first few pages of Art Geek Zoo, and but like performing it. And that didn't happen in one take. That was a bunch of takes.
It was at some ALA years ago at the American Library Association conference. I actually did a live reading of my mini comic Captain Cat, Former Shark Hunter, and it was with like audience participation. Like somebody from the audience came up and played. I think they played Maggie and I played Captain Cat.
Oh, is this captured?
I don't think so. It was fun, but it's not my skill set, you know? So like it really took like a lot out of me, and I was like, I can't imagine doing a whole book like that. 8-page mini comic with not much dialogue, no problem. But yeah, but that is another thing. Like if you have like a decent acting chops and maybe like your way around some sound editing equipment, that could be another thing to add on to it as well. I don't know. I mean, I guess like I'm trying to dig at what kinds of things would we need to think about when evaluating whether or not to invest in making it more of a digitally native product. And like you said, like there'd be like pre-orders, doing like a pre-sale, doing like a mailing list thing, maybe doing like small experiments. Like I could see doing like a version of a friendly game where here's like just the comic digital download for X amount. Here's a version with like a half-hour audio commentary, and see what the takers are. Like, okay, well, if there's if a lot of people take the one with the audio commentary, okay, well now I can do something even more ambitious with that. Let's see what else we can.
What's great is that you get real evidence there. It's not hypothetical, right? So those are people going through every step of the every step that's required to become aware of what you're offering, and then make a choice and actually commit and do the purchase. And then you get to see like, well, okay, where do the numbers, what do they point to? What's happened? But it is a bit of work. Another way you could test is something you mentioned a few different times in Lean Into Art, where you've used like your Instagram posts as a way to gauge interest and reactions. Yeah. Even if you're thinking of doing sort of bundle, pack in, what have you, if you wanted to just sort of perform, either doing video, pointing at a comic, pointing at you, whatever, whether it's video, audio, or both, there's a lot of ways where you can just do a couple of social posts and see what happens that don't necessarily represent like, oh, this is all the work and polish I would put into something for sale, but it's directional. It would indicate something.
So can you come up with like a case in point? Like what would that look like?
Well, let's say you were thinking, okay, I want to test them behind the scenes. You could literally do like a commentary on one page or one panel, and it's like this bite-sized thing to share that doesn't put you into, okay, I've got to think through some, clear talking points, have a beginning, middle, and end, or something that I want to make extra valuable as this piece of content that gets bundled with my mini comic. You could just say, okay, I think I want to do that. And a way to test that would be to just sort of, point your smartphone at your comic and talk, and or critique, or whatever that thing is, what represents what you were thinking of doing. And instead of doing that whole thing and going all the way to getting it ready and packaged and put into the store system, your platform of choice, I mean, it's just a social post, which is a lot less work.
I see. Okay.
Not the
Yeah.
same data you get, right? But it's a bit like how you describe testing characters, as far as villains for Boulder and Fleet and other ideas through just your warm up sketches and whatnot. Um, there's what Lucy Bellwood mentioned, like what sell your sawdust,
Yeah. Yeah. That was on a
and
Galaxy Super Adventure show that we did.
yeah,
Um, well, yeah, yeah, and I could see also doing like bundling up with like here's like just the straight comic, here's the comic with all the sawdust, with which is to say, and this is another thing I've put on my Patreon is like here's like the post-it note thumbnails, the second draft thumbnails, like even like here's the outline that I used, so you can see all the materials that went into making this final thing. Like if you're really interested in like the DVD box set kind of idea. Um, there's a lot of discussion going on in the chat about other kinds of things, and this is something else that when we talked about like appifying comics. Um, is it Charles Tofield said there are apps they can use now that can help with doing find your own adventure visual novels, right? And I remember when iPads first came out, like the thing that excited me was the idea of like branching narrative in a comic. Like if these two characters leave a scene, you can just follow them. You leave the main narrative and just follow these other two characters, and the comic can continue. Um, and there's Charles is saying Will Terry, the children's book illustrator, was using a program that did a lot of the heavy lifting to do that for him, and you can find it about on his YouTube channel. Joseph Coco is suggesting that perhaps it's Twine.
Twine is really good. That's one I would recommend exploring. Oh, and there's another one called. It started in Python, but there's a JavaScript version of it too. It's like, yeah, Python graphic novel. I'll get back to you.
Okay. And Charles is also saying that you're still waiting for me to come back to SPX in the East Coast. SPX is a possibility this year. You know, I've actually got a new book to promote and go out and try to sell to people. So I have a very strong incentive to hit some more comic conventions this year in 2018. So who knows? That would be cool. I love SPX and I love coming down to Bethesda. So we'll see. But thank you for that vote of confidence. Casey Van Heis, who was on the show, is working on. This is from Joseph. There's a few visual novel tools. Casey Van Heis, who was on the show, her group is working on such a piece of software. So yeah,
I found it. So RenPy and RenJS are two other good versions. I was really impressed with RenJS. But if I were starting out and doing rapid prototyping and I didn't want to do any coding, Twine is where I would do some exploration, because you don't have to publish the version you initially draft, but if you figure out that sort of flow and whatnot, anyway, Twine's a nice, really nice tool. But then would you be able to take an existing mini comic and make it non-linear or branching? I suppose you could.
It seems to me like you're asking to create another thing entirely when you do that, which has been some of the discussion going on in the chat too, is like evaluating this investment of, is it going to be a straight port, right? Just take it and strip away what makes it unique as a physical object and just make it a digital object, which implies a diminishment in value. It implies it. I didn't say that it makes it a fact, right? Like that's a hurdle we have to overcome, going back to Brandon's statement about making widgets. Or you bake in new value by having it take on a new life form. And I think that's up to everybody to individually make that decision, right?
Yeah, totally. And it's like what is convenient for you as a creator is going to be different from someone else. It's like it's a Venn diagram that we've described a bunch of different times, but you think about like what is feasible, viable, and desirable. So desirable is that's a human-centered thing, and how are you reaching your audience, and what are they caring about as far as when they come to consume this work, and is what you created going to, somehow, I mean, one could say that there is a bit of extra value in the digital, is that it's portable, right? It can be in their pocket at any time. So,
and you could have it now, it's like,
yeah.
I just ordered a new shoulder bag. In my ever ongoing hunt to get the perfect bag to carry my whole studio in. And I had to wait a week. I had to wait a week for it. And it was like torture. It's like, I got to wait a week? What are we living in, the Stone Age? Why do I have to wait so long to get a thing? Whereas like there's that wonderful, wonderful immediate gratification of like, oh, I want that. I get it now,
which is, yeah, but honestly, that weight and that desire and that pain and whatnot, there's a little bit of a, um you can value that thing you receive more because you went through an experience to get it, to consume it.
Yes, this goes back to that story I've probably told before about like the year I found all of the presents in my parents' closet like 2 weeks before Christmas. And
Oh
like
no.
Christmas was ruined. It was ruined. Like I thought at the moment it was awesome, but then like Christmas Day came, I'm like, oh yeah, there's no surprises now. And like after that, it was like, nope, I don't want to know. I just don't want to know, and I want that anticipation. That anticipation is part of the experience. So yes, totally. Okay, this gets us to another thing. Let's talk about scarcity for a second because there's another way.
Scarcity.
You put it on the web. The whole idea is to bypass scarcity, but part of the value of this is scarcity. So something you wrote in the notes that I thought was yes, we need to touch on that is putting it back in the vault, right?
Mm.
Just because we can make it available all the time doesn't mean that it should be. And I go through periods where I don't have anything in the Etsy store for a while, partially because it's like I don't have the bandwidth to like, maintain it. But other part of it also is like, well, now it's like an event when I put new stuff in there.
uh there's there yeah, so like having something special, like you mentioned, the ability to change the cover, test different covers, or I mean even like color versus black and white and things that may not be too hard to navigate in an automated way digitally. But yeah, that specialness is, it seems like the ways of the specialness are capabilities of the digital platform are different. Like you can easily put video in something, you can easily put audio in something or adjacent via like one click away. Um, but the that scarcity is a tough one. Um, would you consider a way to, I could see producing something that is one off, where what if you had a script that took your PDF, and so you didn't do your order through Etsy where it's all automated, but you had a task that was partially automated. So you do a doodle, you do a drawing, and now that's a digitally distributed unique item, because you take the drawing, you drop it in a folder, you have an automator task on Mac, or choose your adventure, or even a Python script on any platform that just boop merges that image in a planned way with your PDF. And now there you go. It is totally special. It is totally unique. It's duplicable because it's not atoms. It's not in the physical world. But
Hmm.
what do you think?
I think we're closed in on final thought.
All right.
And Charles Tofield is also bringing into the chat. There are many visual novels out on Steam. Did we mention Steam as a platform for distributing stuff?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Mhm.
Does Steam do any comics?
Yes.
Huh.
I have. I don't know if I've consumed any comics on Steam. I think through like Humble Bundle licensed stuff, I might have one. I know I've got a couple visual novels, but which are inherently, I mean, they're interactive. That's, the lines have been blurred as far as story and the like linear consumption of story and whatnot. But yeah, okay. So it looks like in the chat there are
Yeah.
many.
Many.
Okay.
And yeah, Charles is also suggesting that like a visual novel, like in like what I would do is a visual novel. I never even thought about that before. What would I do as a visual novel? Interesting idea.
Yeah, branching narrative.
You would probably have cute characters all expressing like caring for one another, and then somebody being a jerk. That's the kind of thing that I would probably bring to it.
Yeah. So I'm interested. If that's the start of your pitch, I'm curious.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll talk to Casey. Talk with somebody who actually knows. Oh yeah, Charles was bringing up Equalizers of the Divide, an old comic I did like 10 years ago, and that was essentially the comic, right? Snide jerk in the form of a burning wood demon in armor, bossing around a couple of thugs to harass some hopeful young people. Anyway,
Awesome. So that's all right. So where do we go with this as a final thought? I imagine we have one more thing to talk about, and then uh I mean, are there, let's see, because we've really explored this the topic. I mean, and there's like an openness to almost like we have a lot of ideas that it seem like on our plate that we're like, yeah, I'm thinking about doing this, and I guess what's kind of, I guess, what are the friction points? Like, it's digital. It's supposed to be easier, right? Why? What's
mm-hmm.
stopping us?
Yeah, what's stopping us?
Right?
As we could explore a lot of things, like get in the way of doing these things.
Yeah.
And Joseph's question at the top was that he's doing the InDesign layout because he's filling in capacity where it's needed, right? Which says that there's an amount of effort there, right? That is not insubstantial. So let's talk about some of those friction points in a second. How about that?
Sounds good.
All right. So we'll do that in about a minute and I want to say a minute and 30 seconds. Can I find my music for it? There we go. I found my music for the next part. All right. So we want to thank some other people who make this show possible. And those people happen to be us. We make the show possible. We put on the show. And, we announced ourselves as content creators. And here's some of the content that we create. I make a comic called Boulder and Fleet at boulderandfleet.com. And I pulled up a page from, I went to a different tab. Here we go. I pulled up a page from the comic Mining for Trouble, which is the one I mentioned earlier as the one that you get. You get this PDF as a thank you for signing up for my Patreon at patreon.com/Jerzy. What's Boulder and Fleet about? It's about two best friends who go on adventures together. This ambitious little bird and her best friend who is a big, strong bear. Big, strong bear, let's go fight a dragon. I don't like fighting very much. What? How can we become great adventurers if you don't like fighting dragons? That's the tensions that are explored in there. Cute animal monsters. Cute best friends. So, Rob, you make a game.
I do. And yeah, this panda needs you. That's the game I make. And it's a really mellow pattern matching block stacking puzzle game that it was initially in the concept came from my wife Kate, who has background about early childhood things, and she was like, what if we did something that worked for the young audience, that we're getting into using the iPad with our first kid and all that. And well, that's where the idea for this panda came from, where you've got this cute panda walking through a bamboo forest, and there's a stack of shapes that waiting for you, and a cloud comes along and knocks them all down, and it's your job to help the panda put things the way they should be, right? And the puzzles start out really basic and easy, and they gradually become a little more challenging through over 50 different levels. And you're encouraged every step of the way as the panda dances and celebrates, and the music gets a little more happy until it goes all the way to the flute, and the flute brings you on to the next thing. And you can get this on iPhone and your iOS devices, so phone and tablets, Android phone and tablets, and it's available for desktops, Mac and Windows. If you like that version, it's at itch.io. So that's how I've learned about that platform. And anyway, there you go. You can learn more about it at this-panda.com.
This-panda.com. And if you have purchased it, a great thing you could do is give it a star review wherever. Is there a star review on itch.io? At least in the iTunes App Store, there is. Like giving it a rating helps more people
Google
find
Play.
the game. And Google Play as well. And then let's say you're here not because you want to consume the stuff that we make, but you like the way we think. That's very kind of you to say. Thank you very much for saying that or thinking that. And there's more stuff that we make that is concerns the way we think about things, the way we break down ideas, and that's at leanintoart.com/workshops, where you can download workshops at a price of your choosing, even free. But if you get some value out of it, a really nice thing you could do is go back and buy it again. Like that's like giving us a tip for the thing that we made that you found value in. If you're watching the video on YouTube right now, giving it a thumbs up helps more people find the show. And if you're listening to the show in a podcatcher like iTunes, giving us a 5-star review helps more people find the show as well. And we thank everybody who has been doing all of those things. It means a lot to us.
Thank you very much. Well,
All right, final thought time.
Here we are. So, lots of fun ideas. Some ideas seem pretty approachable. Some seem like a fair amount of work. And in that whole spectrum, like what gets in the way of getting this new distribution for an existing project?
You kind of highlighted a few earlier. Every platform has its own special needs and approach and customs, right? Like, oh, your preview image has to be X amount of pixels wide. No, I said 500 pixels wide. All right, but what if I put it in 700 wide? No, 500. We're not resizing it on our end, buddy. You know, file size limitations. And since everyone is different, if you want to ever update them, that has a cascading effect, right? In the case, in the case of going back to Joe Coco's example, paginating it, right? Putting the darn thing together as a PDF. So my Macintosh died recently. So I've been doing everything on my PC, my VioZ Canvas. And one of the learning hurdles that I've had is, how do I make a verkackte PDF in Windows natively, right? It was so easy in Mac OS, but in the PC, it's like, yeah, you just like select all and then like right click and then hit, export to PDF. And then I do that. Pages aren't in order. I don't know why. Why did you put the pages in order? Well, can I open it up in like a PDF viewer and rearrange the pages like I do in Acrobat? No, not in the native one. Oh, and by the way, we're switching it to Edge. Now you got to use Edge to look at PDFs. Well, can I edit the PDF in Edge? No. So,
yeah, that's an interesting one. I guess if any leaners know of good, probably open source PDF editing things for Windows, it'd be neat to hear. Because yeah, that's been many years for me. I remember, wasn't there something called PDF Creator that was like, I thought it was like a printer. So it didn't allow for editing, but it just acted like a printer.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a surmountable obstacle, but it's a real obstacle. Like, how do you do pagination, right? Like, if you don't, InDesign is not an easy program to learn, right? I mean, like, yeah, I know Photoshop. Well, InDesign's a different beast altogether. So, like, just layout software, that's another hurdle. Like, and then tracking down old files. Like, if you were talking earlier about, like, let's dig out some old books from like 10 years ago. Oh, where did I put those CDs, or DVDs, or however I archive those things.
Hunting down those old files. Yikes. That's a really good one to point out.
So, and then like writing copy for the darn things, right? Like, how am I going to sell this thing? How am I going to come up with copy that is enticing and, like, getting people interested in it? A log line for the darn thing. That's no small task either. So
it's not. It's a different hat to wear. I mean, all your skills that you've already built to iterate and draft your story. Yep, that can help you. But like, this is beyond the task. So, if you feel super satisfied by just getting that thing done and putting it into the world, in a way that's really minimally sales driven, like really, doing a lot of some kind of marketing and presentation of it. That could have a lot of friction, beyond even like the nuance of like this portal versus that portal and their quirks, getting the good copy where it's like, I know I might have to make it shorter for this portal versus that portal, but just making it, come into existence. You may have some, that's another, it's a bit of work.
The guys in the chat are so great. They're already giving me options for PDF organizers. What is it? Bullzip is one. And then LibreOffice. I forgot about LibreOffice. That's another one I should look
very at. Nice.
But then also, somebody mentioned Adobe Illustrator. Yeah, sure, except the only problem is I don't have it for my PC. I bought a full version for my Mac years ago, CS5, and I'm not ready to make the leap to subscribing to the Adobe ecosystem again. I'm trying to see how far I can get without actually having to go back, Nothing against Adobe. It's just that I'm trying to see if I can not have that monthly fee. Anyway, any other frictions that we can think of?
I think those are pretty good. Unless, I mean, there's always the frictions that you add on your own, right? Like, just really optimistic assumptions that end up being a lot of work, right? So if you think like, well, oh, I want to change the aspect ratio of the comic, or I want to really, I don't know, I want to do multiple language versions. I want to do, I don't know, just pick something that like sounds great, right? I mean, yeah, multiple language versions, awesome. Some other aesthetic thing that you've got as a vision, great. But all of a sudden you could have created like potentially like a lot more stuff to cover, or like the behind the scenes and the extras. Some extras are, not trivial. It pays to be really choosy as far as that's where the feasible comes in, right? So viable, desirable, and feasible, right? So what can you produce? What can you produce well and within your own sort of resources?
I run into this discussion with every collaborative partner. I team up with you on Lean Into Art. I team up with Zach Giolongo on the Galaxy of Super Adventure show, and Ben Hatke and Lucy Bellwood. I'm teaming up with Dan Mishkin on a comics project that's going to happen this year. And in every case, I hear myself saying these words: how can we make this as easy to do as possible? Not out of laziness, but out of efficiency, so as not to let the thing get bloated and become unbearable and unwieldy, right? And so like that's something that I try to enforce as much as possible with myself. Can I make it even easier to do, right? And I even think about this when I'm doing quotes for gigs. It's like, well, here's like the really fancy version. Here's the version if I find a lot of shortcuts to make it super easy to do, which is going to change the nature of it a little bit. But, it also depends on what kind of bandwidth and kind of investment you have in it, I guess.
Well, and that's right. So feasible, viable, right? So the investment, let's see, what kind of sales will you need to recover this, your investment?
Yeah. And we didn't even talk about that. That's right. That was okay. I want to knit this into the discussion just a tiny bit. So like one of these mini comics right here, like I track how long it takes to print the covers because I really want to know how much it actually costs me to make one of these things. Like not just the materials, but labor cost, right? So yeah, the interior pages, printing these at a place like a copy shop is maybe 25 cents per unit. Cover stock, we're looking at somewhere between like 3 to 4 cents per cover just for the paper alone, because I buy it in big bulk, like reams, right? Then there's the printing. I got to count the ink. I got to count the screens, use of the silk screens, and I got to count the amount of time it took me to actually pull those screens. So really, like the math I did on all of that comes down to when I do like batches of 100 of these at a time, about $1.20. So that means that's a reasonable amount.
Pretty efficient.
It's pretty efficient.
Yeah.
But that means that it's going to be about a $3 cover price on this, right? Because you do double your unit cost or a little bit more than that if possible. How does that change when you think about it as a digital object now? Right? Because now all that labor has been done. Well, but now you got to think about the labor about doing the pagination, setting up the storefront, and all that other stuff. Oh, how many pages? This is 8 pages, Charles. That's what people are asking in the chat. So this is an 8-page mini comic. So, which amounts to 1 sheet of copy paper and then half a sheet of French's fancy, what is it called? Pop tone paper.
So what about digital though? So you switch that to digital and, you would hopefully do some of these calculations to make an informed choice. And even if it is an experiment, to have some idea of like, well, what's this experiment costing you? Assuming that I mean, we don't operate under, infinite budgets on any of our projects. So, feasible, viable, desirable are handy, handy to check, handy to explore your assumptions. And if, you have like a list of assumptions in each of those buckets, and you think, well, what if I got rid of this one? What if I said, I was going to do video commentary, but I think audio would be fine. Is that going to be really less desirable? It's still going to be like this different media add-on that you can't do in a physical book. So yeah, I think it does fit my hypothesis. I still can do this test and make it easier to produce. So there's thinking it through is going to probably help.
Yeah. All right.
So-
Well, I think we did a podcast.
I think so.
At least
I vote. I would like to bring this topic to the table that we have podcasted.
Point of order. You're out of order. You're out of order.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thanks, Joseph Coco, for suggesting this topic to us. And if you have a topic that you want to suggest to us, you want us to chew on, you can go to leanintoart.com/contact, and that will get sent to both of us. We can discuss it amongst ourselves, whether like how we would break it down as a topic, and we'll bring it to the show. We want to know what you guys are actually interested in hearing more about. And we hope this one was interesting to you. And thanks to everybody who's been hanging out with the chat with us tonight. Thanks to Rob for this discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Jerzy.
And this show is recorded every week, Thursday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central, and it's collected as a podcast on patreon.com/leanintoart and on YouTube on this channel. So if you aren't subscribed to this channel, please do so now. All right, we'll be back next week and, chewing on another visual storytelling topic. Until then, I have been Jerzy Drozd of leanintoart.com and Jerzy Drozd on Instagram.
And I've been Rob Stenzinger of leanintoart.com and Rob Stenzinger on Instagram.
Okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.
All right, everybody, I'm going to shut down the live stream. Thanks, everybody in the chat today. That was great.
Yeah, thanks for being here.